Summer blockbuster season is over, and a lot of movie fans are trading the big screen experience for smaller screens at home. But whether your screen of choice is your computer, tablet, phone, smart TV, or even your internet-enabled popcorn popper, Infosec wants to make sure that you secure your screen. That's why we've created the free Secure Your Screen Toolkit to produce and direct you and your employees during National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. The toolkit includes 1 training module and an assessment, 5 posters to hang on the walls of your screening room, 4 newsletter templates, 4 email templates, and an employee presentation so you can save the day by preventing your organization from ending up with a starring role in the next big hacker event. Make Infosec your best supporting hacker preventer. See what I did by going to infosecinstitute.com/free to download our free toolkit and help turn the next big hacker heist into a box office flop this October. Look, I'm not going to ask you why you have an internet-enabled popcorn popper. I know we all bought some weird stuff during lockdown, but I will ask you to learn to secure your screens and secure your devices by going to infosecinstitute.com/free. One more time, rule of threes, that's infosecinstitute.com/free. And now, lights, camera, take action. Let's start the show. Today on Cyberwork, I'd like to introduce you to Brianne Caplan, the founder and executive director of Code Your Dreams, a nonprofit that brings knowledge, accessibility, and excitement about programming and tech to learners from age 5 to adulthood in underserved communities. Brianne tells us some incredible stories like the Women's Coding and Data Analysts Group in Burundi, exciting coding projects for students interested in art, music, and dance, and why her experience inadvertently creating a nonprofit company that was incorporated as a for-profit was a learning experience that helped kickstart Code Your Dreams. This one's really inspiring, so I hope you'll keep it here for Cyberwork. Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week we talk with a different industry thought leader about cybersecurity trends, the way those trends affect the work of Infosec professionals while offering tips for breaking in or moving up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. My guest today, Brianne Caplan, former data scientist turned tech education activist, is the founder and executive director of Code Your Dreams, a nonprofit fostering community action and innovation by democratizing tech education for underserved communities globally. Driven by a passion for equity and inclusion, Brianne has spearheaded efforts to diversify the technology sector, impacting over 5,000 individuals through Code Your Dreams project-based learning programs. Currently serving as program director for University of Chicago's Careers in Computer Science program and founder of Coder Heroes, she continues to break down barriers and innovate in educational spaces. So Brianne was someone that I met at the Women Impact Tech event and was really looking forward to hearing more about Code Your Dreams here. And I'm hoping you will as well. Brianne, thanks so much for joining me today. Welcome to Cyberwork.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So to start with, I'd like to ask you about some of your early work and interests. So your career page on LinkedIn has lots of interesting roles in data science and data analysis, as well as education and career development in computer science at the U of C, and even a bit of early app-based fundraising in the form of something called Cash for Schools. So we'll get to that in a bit, but the combo of data analytics and education initiative and a little philanthropy all point to your current work with Code Your Dreams. So, Brianne, could you tell me about where you first got interested in computers, tech, data science, and also how you started working with these philanthropic causes?
Absolutely. So when I was in college, I actually never heard of computer science before. Mm-hmm. And my brother sent me a text and he said, "Hey, I hear computer science is the trending thing to do. Why don't you try it?" And I texted back, computer ... what? Because I didn't understand how there could be a science behind the computer. I didn't understand there was software and hardware and things that tie them both together. Mm-hmm. And so when I went into my first computer science course, it was an intro class at my university. I was one of the only female students in that class. And when I sat down, I looked to my left, I looked to my right, I looked in front of me, and everyone was already typing code on their computers. Yeah. So I sat there thinking, how is it the first day of intro and I'm already behind? And I felt like, I always, in my studies, always felt like you take classes, you set yourself up for success, you do what you're successful at. Well, if I'm already behind, how could I ever be successful in this class when I'm already at the bottom?
Right.
So that's something that stuck with me throughout my career journey. I did have an interest in computer science. For me, I've never been really interested in the theory, but more interested in utilizing computer science as a tool, almost like I'm a carpenter and I have all of these tools in my tool belt. So I got my first job out of college. It was my sister-in-law's recommendation. She said advertising was a really fun industry to be in, which was true. So I started working at an advertising firm, still loved technology, but had no idea how I could get a job in tech without having a computer science degree. And there was a competition at work where you could build anything and win $10,000. So I decided, heck yeah.
Yeah.
That was a large amount of money,
Still
especially then out of college.
Yeah.
So what I ended up building was actually a data science solution. It was using Python. I was building machine learning models. I didn't even know what that meant, but that's what it was. And so when I ended up winning the competition, that opened me up to mentors and to people who told me, hey, this is actually a career. This is a career that's growing. And so that's what got me into my first role as a data scientist. I worked at a great startup. Still the CEO is one of my mentors. And I always had that feeling with me, feeling like, okay, I quote unquote made it into tech, but I thought of myself feeling so helpless, like, how could I ever be sitting where I am today? And so that feeling, and then just always being really passionate about the education world, that's what drew me back into the education space and the nonprofit world with founding Code Your Dreams.
That's awesome. What a great answer. And that's a huge part of what I try to do with this podcast as well is just any of those friction points where you think, oh, well, this can't work for me because I'm already too far behind, or I'm too old, or I've done too many other things, or like you said, I haven't been coding since forever, and there are so many opportunities, and a lot of it is just sort of getting past, things that you're saying to yourself in your head and so forth. But also, and it's not just that, like once you created this thing, like you said, suddenly that unlocked mentors who were able to give you, if those mentors had been in that room of that first day of computer science class, that it could have changed everything. So I completely understand how one follows the other. And I think that's really inspiring. So I mentioned it briefly, but I'd love to hear more about Cash for Schools, an app that you created that appears to be a sort of a gamified fundraiser program for underfunded schools. So can you tell me about how it worked and how it went out into the world, and if so, some of the benefits that it produced?
Yeah. So this was my first adult-ish foray into entrepreneurship. I was in college. And yeah, education has always been like the closest thing to my heart. It's always been something that like my grandparents, my parents told me were just so valuable. So I started learning about tech, started learning coding by myself. And so I decided to build this app called Cash for Schools. I hate that name, by the way.
Yeah.
But
it's of the time.
it's of the time. It's literally number 4.
Yeah.
This was back in, 2013. And I wanted to build this thing that would make a difference. It was basically, as you said, gamified fundraising. Students would complete math and STEM games. And then for different points they would score, it would then earn them cash for their schools to help with general school fundraising. So basically an incentive to continue learning the maths and sciences in a gamified way. I, at that point, though, really didn't know anything about business. I just learned basically that people could start businesses, which is why I did. I didn't realize people could start nonprofits. So this was basically a nonprofit, but a for-profit.
A for-profit nonprofit, yeah.
It was a for-profit where there was no revenue model. There was no profit anywhere. And all of the revenue was going right back to schools. It's a great nonprofit. idea. But as you can probably see, I talked to businesses, got their buy-in, talked to schools, started getting the app in the hands of students. At the end of the day, I didn't have like a sustainable revenue model to actually get funding in to go to schools.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it kind of crashed and burned. But yeah, that was really my first entrepreneurship story.
Yeah, I love that, and again, I'm as someone who has made more mistakes than not. I'm always like hearing inspired mistakes that turned into something, beneficial. Because I mean, everything you're saying there sounds like things that you have applied to Code Your Dreams and other things that you do now. That's amazing. I love that story. Brianne, I wanted to get you on the show, as I say, because we met at Women Impact Tech, the conference at Willis Tower in Chicago. And I found out that you were the founder and executive director of Code Your Dreams, which I had heard before. We almost had another guest on who was on your board of directors and didn't work out. But I wanted to hear more about it from the person who founded it and runs it. So for our listeners, tell us what Code Your Dreams is all about. What are your goals, your tools, and your area of reach? Like you said, this is a worldwide thing. So where does it stretch to?
Absolutely. So really when starting kind of on a high level, we see technology as power. Mm-hmm. And today technology impacts all aspects of our lives, but it's typically a homogenous group, usually within big tech, that mm-hmm. are the ones developing those technologies. And preaching to the choir, a lot of times we see, not intentional, but there's a lot of times unintentional biases and harm that comes from that. And what we really want to do is give this power of technology to every person, every community around the world. So anyone can see a problem in their community and solve it with technology, because those are the people that understand the nuances of their own community. Right. So what we do is we teach computer science as that vehicle for community action and innovation. We work with students as young as 5 years old, all the way up through adults. And we're currently here in the US, in East Africa, and soon South America. So what we've really been doing is just pushing ourselves to test our curriculum and build really strong curriculum in different environments, whether it's inside a prison. We're actually working with a tablet technology called Adovo as well, so that learners can learn both in our live classes within a prison, but also on their own time on tablets. We're in different schools, community centers, libraries, park districts, legal centers, you name it, different countries for students with different learning abilities. We this fall are launching our first fully neurodivergent cohort. And we also work, with students of other different disabilities as well. Some of our great partners like Deaf Kids Code, the Chicago Lighthouse, really pushing us to make sure that our curriculum is as inclusive for all learners, different languages, really, some internet barriers, just lots of challenges. So the types of programs that we teach really depend on age. We do a lot of app development, web development, and data science and analytics. We also, especially for our younger audiences, really look into how do we bring everyone into technology. So we have dance and coding programs. We have dance and art programs to really bring in those creative folks and show them, look, if you love art, you are going to love technology because you can do some really awesome stuff with it. Same with like music and dance. We're working with robotics and wearables. It is so fun. So that's just a little bit about Code Your Dreams. But happy to talk more.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear, sort of what what types of things are being, because now that I realize there's such a span from 5-year-olds to adults, and in different parts, in different countries and different languages and so forth, like, how do you create your own curriculum? Do you use kind of like outside curricula or training materials? Do you sort of set your own agendas? Like what, and like, how do you sort of determine what things are the right, difficulty level for the right age and so forth?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we develop for our long-term programs, like our summer intensives, our academic year programs, that's all developed in-house because we do have such a focus on talking about identities and communities, thinking about like asset mapping for communities, problem identification, and really just keeping that theme of communities tied throughout the curriculum. So it's all developed in-house. We have a team of both educators and technologists that together develop and test our curriculum that we have. So we often also do like workshops and conferences and fun tech festivals. And so we do partner with a company called Imagi. They're a pixel art company. And so we leverage their curriculum for those shorter form workshops. They're really fun. You get to learn Python and then build your own pixel art.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's all really fun.
Yeah, I love that. And do you do this? Is this sort of, are these like after school activities? Do you partner with these schools or these communities to sort of do it with the sort of help of the school and the school's equipment, or is this more kind of like an after school sort of like youth activity kind of thing?
Oh, it so depends. We do whatever we can.
Yes,
so
right.
We love partnerships. So we love partnering with a school or a community center where they have the space or a library and they have students. We can meet the students where they are, either after school or over the summer. Sometimes they have a computer lab. If not, we do have computers that we provide for our students that they then get to keep after the program, because of course we want them to continue coding and continue being technologists. But yeah, it really all depends who our partner is, where we're teaching. Sometimes we have open enrollment programs that are for, any student that's in the neighborhood, where we might have to bring computers if there aren't any. We just work with what we have.
Great. I love that. So I want to talk about, because it sounds like, your organization is very much built on the idea of filling in areas where there's deficiencies, especially, like I say, in underserved communities, underserved schools, underfunded schools. And I want to get a sense of, like, can you tell me, based on the schools and students you've worked with, as well as maybe your baseline understanding of what type of computer science education is offered in, say, well-funded schools around Chicago and areas and so forth, like, what are the gaps in opportunity that you're having to leap in and fill? Can you give me a sense of, like, say, what like a suburban well-funded, or like magnet school or whatever is doing versus what's not happening and what you're trying to make happen in less funded schools?
Yeah, absolutely. And there can be a huge difference between what one school has and then what another school doesn't have, even within a 2-mile radius. So it really all comes down to the school. Of course, like, from just trends, we tend to see that, rural areas tend to have less resources than urban areas. But in general, well-funded schools might have a 3D printer, a robotics team, AP computer science classes, whereas a less funded school, they might have an intro class. I think one of the big challenges often comes down to the availability of teachers. So we see a lot of computer science graduates going into tech, getting these really great salaries, versus, coming back to their local school and teaching where they're under-resourced, much lower salaries. And so there's just a shortage of computer science teachers really around the world. With those teacher shortages, there's not too much of a standardized curriculum. A lot of times teachers are having to find their own curriculum, a lot of times paying for curriculum. And then it maybe not being everything that they wanted it to be. So we really just listen to our schools, our teachers, and our partners for what their needs are and what their students are looking for. There also tends to be, different resources. Students with disabilities, for example, tend to have less resources that work for them. So for us, it's really important to just have a lot of partners that reflect the needs of our students.
Yeah, I guess I'm definitely asking that as someone who, went to that level of school about the time when the tech curriculum was typing and word processing. So I guess I'm kind of curious about what is sort of expected of students these days, like regardless of funding level or whatever. What is there a sort of like countrywide or worldwide sort of baseline expectation of a certain level of computer or tech literacy as students graduate, say, 8th grade or middle school or high school or whatnot?
Not so much. There are specific computer science outcomes, and those tend to be kind of city by city. So, for example, Chicago, especially in the Midwest, is seen as the shining star of what computer science can be. So when you have conferences and meetups within the Midwest, when they find someone in Chicago, they get really excited to hear about what we're doing here. So that's really positive. The computer science department within Chicago Public Schools, they are a really passionate group of people, and they're just taking a lot of initiatives to make things better. There is a new computer science requirement that requires students to take a computer science course in order to graduate. I will say that what that course looks like per school can look vastly different. Also, how many computer science courses there are within a school also can be vastly different. And what the makeup of students look like there as well. And kind of just the support for students who love computer science. A lot of times they don't have too many outlets to continue to kind of engage with the world of technology and continue to build those skills that can lead them into, work right after college, a boot camp, or college.
Yeah. No, I'm my heart is swelling with civic pride. I'm a Chicagoan as well here. So I love hearing that we have such a good computer science organization and also requirements and whatnot. That's awesome. So, but also at the same time, it's easy to get sort of thinking like, well, if everything's going great here, then everything must be going great everywhere. So that's why I'm glad that folks like you and Code Your Dreams are here to sort of make sure that everyone's getting equal access to these great services. So can you talk about some of the more popular activities that Code Your Dreams offers among students you work with? I mean, like you mentioned things like robotics and sort of, can you break more into like the confluences of like tech and art and tech and music and tech and dance that you were mentioning before? Like, what are some of the specific things that people really respond to and get a lot out of?
Yeah. So I would say that the most popular program that we have is app development. We know that students are on their phones constantly, and sometimes they're on their phones in classes. So we have to have a no phone rule. But that tends to be a really popular program and gets students really excited about computer science generally. This is a program that we have that's for students with no computer science background or very little. And by the end of the program, they're able to develop their own app that you can see on any device. They showcase at the end of the program. And that solves a very tangible community problem that they see on a day-to-day basis that's important to them, but also is important to their community. So that one's really exciting because we get students excited about community activism and software for good and all of those fun topics. We also have a program called Activism and Web Design. That's another really popular program. It's, we bring in local activists to talk to our students. So we have one coming up in a couple of weeks on the South Side. We have some great Southsiders coming to talk to our students, getting students really pumped up about the idea of being an activist. And then they learn about UX UI and actually build their own website about the topic that they're most passionate about. So that's popular. The art and coding, the music and coding are all really exciting. They're really experimental programs that we have. Students being able to sew LED lights onto clothing, being able to create wearables, LED lights on their shoes, and to actually code them to go alongside music for like dance groups, dance recitals, casual jam sessions, things like that. And then our art and coding is a really fun one. Also using Python, students being able to come up with different designs. This is also the pixel art curriculum that I was talking about, where, it surprises students sometimes that everything you see on a computer, on a phone is made of pixels. And so boiling everything down to that, having them create their own designs on paper and then code them to actually be able to see on a device is really exciting. There's definitely a magic of seeing something that you coded, getting to hit run, and then actually seeing it pop up for you.
Yeah, that's so cool. I would like to do that myself. That sounds great. I guess let's move from there to sort of like the next stage is like once your students have worked with Code Your Dreams and done all the possible projects and exciting things they can do with you, where do you sort of recommend them to go for their next steps to keep their learnings and passions going? I mean, like you said, college or higher education is a big part, but like in general, what is your sort of like pathway to, making sure that this isn't just like a cool, fun thing that we did one year that I completely forgot about, 2 years later?
Yes, exactly. So that's really, really important for us. And also keeping that alumni network, because those are future change makers and mentors for current students. So keeping that an engaged and supported audience is really important for us so that we're able to continue to support them ideally throughout their entire lives. So I think every student is different. For some students, they really have an entrepreneurship spirit. So supporting them in the development of their business, their startup, helping connect them to different resources. Here in Chicago, there's a ton of pitch competitions, scholarships, grants, and all of that. For students who, want to continue on projects, connecting them. Sometimes it's a volunteer opportunity actually to work on something tech related with Code Your Dreams. Other times it's connecting them with outside organizations, just depending on where their interests are. We have a really cool project actually that's just getting started for some of our graduated students in Burundi. We had 30 women graduate about a month ago from a program called Women Building Change. It was a data science cohort where every woman had their own mentor. They did live data science training, and then they had a career development cohort. And so they learned a bunch of Python and data science, a bunch of statistics, machine learning, NLP. They did a project, but now for them, the next step is let's get a real world project under your belt So they're all in Burundi. So we've connected them with an albino association there in Burundi. For those that don't know, people with albinism in Burundi are a very vulnerable population. Unfortunately, there is a stigma that people believe that they have majestic powers. And so people are literally hunted and killed. And so it's a very scary thing for those with albinism, those who are parents, children, families, and friends. And so they tend to be very isolated, in hiding, not able to attend schools.
Yes.
What the association has as a problem is lack of data. They have resources and support, but they don't know where the people are and who they are for those who do have albinism in the country. So what we've done as a team is create a framework for that data collection, data analysis project, which now we're training our students in the Women Building Change program to then do. They're actually going to be collecting data from around the entire country.
There it is. Okay.
They'll be doing data collection, data management, privacy is very important. So they'll delve into that. And then be able to have this as something that is really important for the country, for humanity as a whole, and is also on their resume and is a great just signifier to potential employers that not only were they part of this program, but they did this huge project that made an impact. So projects are so huge, whether it's your own project, working with another organization. And then, lastly, just connecting students with conferences. There's so many grants and scholarships for conferences, internships, just opportunities in general.
Okay, so Code Your Dreams has been around, what, about 5 years? Is that accurate?
Since May 2018.
Okay. Can you give me a sense of how long on average a student stays with, we have sort of a small thing to go with, what's the average length of student, do they keep with your program from, class year to class year? Is it a 1 year thing? And also what exactly you mentioned that there's mentor programs, and there's obviously got to be some administration involved as well as people who are instructing. What does I'm trying to imagine what happens when Code Your Dreams comes to your school? Who comes there? Is there a teacher and some mentors? Or are there people that kids can bounce ideas off? What does it look like?
Yeah, these are really good questions. So right now, the data tells us that students are usually with us for 1 to 2 years.
Okay.
We do want that to be a longer amount of time. And that's years actually, being in our program, not as an alum. We do want that to increase, and we think it will over time, just as we continue to grow in our resources. What it looks like if you have Code Your Dreams at your school. So there's 2 options for a school. One is we do have a train the trainer model. So for any teacher that's just excited to learn about coding, we can train them to be the instructor for that program. Sometimes that's not possible. We know that teachers are probably the busiest people we know, even next to the president. So a lot of times what we do is we either hire someone or take someone that's already within our organization to teach that program. And it depends on the school. Sometimes, there might be a staff member from the school as a support person in the classroom. Other times not. It really depends on the school.
With regards to things like mentors and sort of alumni of your program, do you have other former students who sort of come and mentor younger students?
We do. And that is just the coolest thing ever, to be able to have a student that went through the program, is now successful in their tech career. It tells us that we're doing something right.
Love
and
it.
there's little better than that. So for us, we want to just grow that as much as possible. When someone, starts our program, we really emphasize, you are now a part of the Code Your Dreams family, and we're here to support you indefinitely. And so that's something that we really want to grow. And yeah, our alumni are amazing. They've gone off to do so many different things. And it's just amazing to see that.
Yeah. So a program like Code Your Dreams seems like it would just be able to grow and grow even more if more people knew about it and were able to donate their time or their funds to the cause. So Brianne, if listeners of this show would like to work as volunteers for Code Your Dreams in any capacity, what sort of professionals are you looking for? What tasks are you in need of, and how can they get involved?
Yeah, so we are a volunteer-driven organization. As the executive director, I myself am a volunteer. Right now, just with funding, our teachers are all paid staff. We have one paid curriculum developer, but otherwise, this all happens thanks to just a passionate group of people. So I would say if you are passionate, period. We would love to work with you. We have worked with such a diversity of backgrounds, from business people to teachers to technologists to marketers to parents. We just love working with anyone who loves what we do, because again, technology impacts all aspects of our lives. There is no one that does not belong in this conversation. We have board members who are based in Burundi and Rwanda and places around the world. So location is never an issue when it comes to, getting you in our ecosystem. And to get involved, you can go to www.codeyourdreams.org. Follow us on social media. Happy if you want to send me a message on LinkedIn or via email. It's Brianne@codeyourdreams.org.
Love it. So for any younger listeners who might be who are hearing this, might be in underserved schools, and, do you have any advice for them to sort of, if their teachers aren't necessarily, proactively, getting you on the line, like how do they sort of like send the bat signal out for Code Your Dreams? Or, how do they sort of maybe even start like study groups with friends and stuff like that? What do you recommend if someone says, oh, I want that too, and I don't know how to get it started? Do you have any sort of shortcuts?
Yeah, I love that. Honestly, reach out to me if you're interested. Tell your teacher, your principal, an administrator. I'm happy to get in contact with them, see what the needs are, and either recommend us or another organization that makes sense. There are a lot of great organizations that are also working to drive change. We need even more resources, more organizations.
Yeah.
It is such a big pie of different problems and challenges, and the impact can be massive. So if you're interested, definitely reach out to me. I love talking to students that are already change makers. We actually have one volunteer who's a middle school student, and she is a volunteer with Code Your Dream. So you are never too young to start making a difference. And also, if you're interested, use LinkedIn. Be safe about it, right? Yes. The internet can be scary, but LinkedIn, I have had high school students reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm able to connect them with mentors. You can reach out to people who are at companies or organizations you're excited about. Say, hey, I have this question for you. I'd love to ask this question. It's a big world out there. And we need the younger generation, because the younger generation, it is the future, but it is also today. And we need as many people in this mission as possible. And talk to your friends, right? If you are a young person listening, I am so impressed that you're even listening to this. That in itself, you should be very, very proud of yourself and proud of just the passion you have for this space. So talk to as many people as possible. Don't be shy, and you can do anything.
Love it. Well, that was my last question, was about how listeners could get in touch with you, Brianne Caplan. So do you know your LinkedIn handle? I mean, I imagine it's just your name, right? BrianneCaplan. Is that right?
Yes, it should be. So you can do that. If not, I have contact information on my personal website. It's www.codewithbri.com. And it should have my personal email there too.
Oh, awesome. Brianne, thank you so much for making our listeners aware of this important organization. I mean, it was such a pleasure to talk to you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank all of you who have been listening to and watching the Cyborg podcast on an unprecedentedly massive scale. And we're so glad to have you along for the ride. Hope you enjoyed this episode. So before I go, I want to invite you all to visit infosecinstitute.com/free to get a whole bunch of free stuff for Cyberwork listeners. Our new security awareness training series, Work Bites, is here, featuring a host of fantastical employees, including a zombie, a vampire, a princess, and a pirate, making security mistakes and hopefully learning from them. Also visit infosecinstitute.com/free for your free cybersecurity talent development ebook. It's got in-depth training plans for the 12 most common roles, including SOC analyst, penetration tester, cloud security engineer, information risk analyst, privacy manager, secure coder, and more. Lots to see, lots to do. Once you go to infosecinstitute.com/free, you'll see it all. And the link is down there, of course. Thank you once again to Brianne Caplan and Code Your Dreams. And thank you all for listening and watching. And as always, we'll see you next week. Have a great one.